I'm Marta, and on this channel I share with you simple recipes from all around the world. And as I promised you last week, today I will show you how my Polish grandma pickles cucumbers. In the first part of this video, I'll tell you a few words about the process and health benefits of food fermentation. And then in the second part, you will see my grandma preparing a jar of beautiful dill pickles. And make sure that you're subscribed to this channel with the bell notification on so that you don't miss my next video when my grandma shows you how easy it is to make sauerkraut at home. Okay, so what is pickling? The quick answer is that it's a preservation of foods in acid. If we put otherwise perishable foods in an environment with a low pH, so an acidic one, we prevent the growth of so-called bad microorganisms, such as yeast, fungi, and bacteria, and therefore we drastically elongate the shelf life of these foods. And there are two ways of pickling. The first one, which I'm not going to talk about today, is pickling in vinegar, which is naturally sour. The other pickling method is called lacto-fermentation. And here the acidic environment necessary to preserve, for example, cucumbers is created by the lactic acid bacteria. Luckily, these microorganisms are naturally present on different foods, including cucumbers, and through a process of fermentation, they can break down starches and sugars present in the vegetables and produce lactic acid. To safely pickle vegetables, we simply need to submerge them in brine, which is the salted water. Salt favors the growth of the beneficial lactic acid bacteria while inhibiting the undesirable spoilage bacteria, which are not salt tolerant. And therefore, salt protects our food for several days until there is enough of lactic acid produced to protect the vegetables for many months. The lacto-fermentation is anaerobic, which means it can occur in absence of oxygen. And this is very convenient because we can easily cut off the oxygen supply simply by submerging the cucumbers under a liquid. And therefore we can prevent the growth of the harmful microorganisms which need oxygen to multiply. Pickling vegetables through this process of fermentation has many great advantages beyond those of simple fermentation. The lactic acid bacteria transform the food into more digestible and nutritious. Moreover, because of the putative health benefits, fermented foods are considered functional foods. Many of the lactic acid bacteria, such as lactobacilli and bifidobacteria, are considered natural probiotics. During fermentation, these microorganisms synthesize vitamins, such as vitamin C, K, or some of the B vitamins. Without going into details, fermented foods have also been reported to have beneficial effects on health by reducing blood cholesterol levels, increasing immunity, protecting against pathogens, fighting osteoporosis, diabetes, or obesity, or even alleviating the symptoms of lactose intolerance. And some of the most recent studies are investigating the relevance of fermented foods in treating or preventing depression or anxiety. It is all very interesting, so I will leave you the references to the studies I'm mentioning here in the description box below the video so that you can go and check it out yourself. Okay, so we know that pickling by fermentation is a great and very cheap way to preserve foods. We also know that it has many great health benefits, but we shouldn't forget about its impact on flavor and textures, because pickling also improves the taste. Okay, so now finally, here's how my grandma pickles cucumbers. The best would be to use cucumbers that you grow in your own garden. Otherwise, you should be able to find them in any Polish grocery shop during summer and early autumn. The second main ingredient is salt. And with only these two, you can already make yourself basic pickles. My grandma, however, insists to add at least a little piece of horseradish root, a few cloves of garlic, and my favorite, dill stems. Horseradish root together with garlic are going to add extra flavor to the pickles, but they also have natural antimicrobial properties and they will help to preserve the cucumbers for even longer. My grandma simply peels the horseradish root and then slices it into chunks. The quantity you can see here is rather a lot, and our pickles had a clear heat to them. My grandma also peeled the garlic. We used 3 cloves, but the next time I will probably double it and use only half of the quantity of the horseradish. But it is all question of preference, so just try it out and adjust it to your likings. And now to my favorite, the dill. We were able to get some beautiful dill stems, but you could replace it with some fresh one or even with some fennel seeds. For me, in the case of dill, more is better because I absolutely love its fragrance. Okay, so now it's time to put everything together and set it for fermentation. You can use any type of glass or ceramic jar as long as it is big enough to fit all your cucumbers. My grandma put some dill stems at the bottom of the jar, and on the top of it she tightly packed all the cucumbers. Next, she stuck the horseradish and the garlic into the empty spaces. And to push it all down, my grandma used the remaining dill stems. And now all of this needs to be covered in brine. I would strongly advise you to use boiled water to get rid of an excess of chlorine, which can be added to the tap water in order to kill bacteria and other microbes. The only rule about salt is not to use the one fortified with iodine, because iodine also has antimicrobial properties, and additionally it will affect the taste and the color of the pickles. For each liter of water we use 30 grams of salt. Hello from the future. So actually by now I already finished recording and editing this video, but now I started thinking and I feel I should really share with you a little edit to this traditional pickling method of my grandma. Because of course she doesn't need a scale, because all her life she was simply measuring a generous tablespoon of salt for every liter of water and was working out perfectly. But I have a PhD in biology, so I should probably be a little bit more precise. Because depending on what kind of salt you are using, the actual amount of salt in 1 tablespoon can be considerably different. Here I compared the weight of 1 tablespoon of very fine table salt and the thick grained sea salt, and there's almost 20% of difference. Another very important fact is that a cucumber is mostly water. And in a salted environment, some of this water will be drawn out and dilute our brine. So to be more precise, from now on, to calculate the amount of salt I need to add, I will base it on the total weight of my cucumbers and the water needed to cover them. And here's how I do it. I place a glass vessel on a scale and I make sure that it is set to 0. And then I add the cucumbers. And already now I can see that the cucumbers alone weigh 640 grams. But now I add water and I make sure that all the cucumbers are covered. And I was very lucky today because my scale shows that the total weight is very close to 1000 grams. Which means that the mathematics will be very easy and I won't need a calculator. So now if I want to add 2% of salt, I simply multiply 1000 by 0.02, so the 2%. And this means I will need to add 20 grams of salt. So now I pour back the water from the cucumbers to another jar and I mix it with the 20 grams of salt. And the brine is ready. Okay, so now we can go back in time to the original video. And make sure the salted water cooled down before pouring it over the cucumbers. Okay, now to keep the cucumbers submerged under the water and protect them from the oxygen, we need a weight. Traditionally, people were using a stone which they previously boiled to sterilize. With my grandma, however, we decided to use another little jar filled with water. And this method worked out really well. With time, salt will draw some extra liquid from the cucumbers and will all expand. So make sure you put the jar with the fermenting pickles on a tray in case of a spill. And keep it open, or cover it only with a thin towel to allow the gas, the CO2, to easily escape. During the first days of fermentation, the jar with pickles should be placed at room temperature. It was very warm in my kitchen and after 5 days I was already very happy with the level of fermentation. But simply keep tasting them every other day to find out when you find them the most delicious. And from that moment on, keep the pickles in the fridge, still covered with the pickling liquid. Once your cucumbers are gone, you can reuse some of the liquid, which is rich in lactic acid bacteria, for the fermentation of your next cucumbers or other vegetables. Before you go, let me show you my favorite summer salad with dill pickles. It is just tomatoes, fermented cucumbers and a few thin slices of red onion. To this I add a generous splash of cream and I sprinkle it all with a freshly ground pepper. It's a great side salad, but sometimes I add a slice of a good sourdough bread and I call it a dinner. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you'd like to be notified when my next video is out, where I explain you how to make sauerkraut at home, make sure that you're subscribed to this channel and click the bell. Thank you for watching until the end, and I hope to see you next Monday. Bye!